James, there are a lot of questions about Brexit. I think we still, what time is the judgment? What the impact on Brexit and opportunities and for Sri Lanka, if there, or what would be the threats for Sri Lanka?
And there is one more to that about the pound also. Will the pound get stronger? Or
Oh, yeah.
Somebody wants to know whether the pound will get stronger or weaker.
First question, opportunities for Sri Lanka as a consequence of Brexit. I commented in the answer to my first question that the British government will remain a determined advocate of free trade and will be investing in free trade. We are an island nation, and islands, be they the UK, be they Sri Lanka, depend on and have always depended on a whole broad set of outward-looking relationships. So the UK is going to remain ambitious to trade with the world and to develop trade and investment with the world. It's looking, I know there's a lot I can't say about Brexit because we don't know how it's going to work out at the moment.
Yeah.
But what I can say is that I think it'll be a little bit bumpy post-Brexit. It's a very, very complicated process, as all of the many countries which have a part in it know very well. But equally, I think that I am confident that after we get over the bumps, then we can look forward to a good and prosperous set of relationships in all areas, both with our immediate neighbours and with countries around the world. What the British government has said, for those of you who are exporting under GSP+, is that GSP+ privileges will continue to extend at current rates to exporters to the UK, just as those rates currently apply to the UK as a member of the European Union. On the Commonwealth, Commonwealth heads of government at the Commonwealth heads of government meeting, which took place in London last year, were clear both about their ambition for the Commonwealth, their determination that it should go through a process of modernisation, and their determination that it should become an organisation which is well placed to respond to the fact that a very large percentage of the people living in Commonwealth countries around the world are young. So I think, yes, I'm ambitious for the Commonwealth too. It's currently going through a process of reform which, as for any organisation which in a sense has become a little set in its ways, isn't easy. But that reform is moving forwards, and I'm confident about our shared ambition. Okay. An ambition shared across the Commonwealth's more than 50 members to develop new value from this very important set of relationships.
Okay. Nissa, can I stop there for a moment and move to China? This on the port city, can you give us an update of the current status and what potential opportunities for Sri Lankan companies? That was one of the popular questions.
Can we also get the popular question about China's debt and management and its burden? Maybe you can cover that as well.
To be frank, I have been here for only 1 month. But fortunately, I really paid a visit to Colombo Port City last Friday. That's my first visit. But I'm sure that there will be more visits. So I would like to, well, in general, I think Colombo Port City is a great opportunity for Sri Lanka. It reminds me of our experience, which started from 40 years ago, exactly, Shenzhen, a very small village, very close in the mainland, very close to Hong Kong. At that moment, the GDP of Shenzhen is just like 0.2% of that of Hong Kong. Well, but now, last year, Shenzhen surpassed Hong Kong in GDP already.
Okay.
But why it happened? Because we have a special economic zone here, there. So we attract a lot of foreign directly investment. And, that's the way we develop Shenzhen to make it a better Hong Kong. 40 years ago, the local people in Shenzhen, they try to get across the border to go to Hong Kong because they think Hong Kong is the heaven. But now Hong Kong people are trying to find a job in Shenzhen. That's the reality.
Yeah.
And I do think we can make
Yeah.
again it happen in here in Colombo City, Port City.
Okay.
But as to the details, I guess you'd better ask my colleagues from the Port City. Fortunately, we have a few colleagues from the Colombo Port City today here as well.
On the question of debt,
Yeah, can you comment? I mean,
Yeah.
does China really look at capacity to repay when you lend to countries like Sri Lanka?
Pardon?
Whether China really looks at the capacity to repay of countries when you're lending?
You mean the foreign debt?
Yeah.
yeah.
China also have foreign debt. Every country has foreign debt. So even American. So, I think at the very beginning, especially for developing countries, a usual practice to start from borrow money. That's normal, but the only problem is that how to find a balance for that. Because you need to think about how much you can repay, when can you repay, and by borrowing so much money, what will you do with that? If you can borrowing so much money, then you develop your local industry, local business, then it's fine.
Okay.
So, by the way, one more point is that the fact, as far as I know, is that the foreign debt of Sri Lanka owning 10% from
total
China,
debt.
owning 10%.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. So are you saying there's more opportunity or?
There is more room to grow.
So I think we should remain this question to, Your Honorable, the Prime Minister.
Can I move to the Canadian High Commissioner? Can you talk a little bit about the education sector, your Canadian education sector? And since I know you all are doing a lot of work in Sri Lanka and how we can...
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the things that's actually a real joy of my job is how many Sri Lankans actually have been educated in Canada and have roots there, and we're happy that that enthusiasm continues. I guess Canada actually has the highest rate of tertiary education in the world. We have an extremely well-educated population. But I think what's been important about that is that when we went in the 1950s and 60s originally to expand tertiary education, increase the education levels of the population, the focus was very much on universities. And then there was a realization ultimately that actually not every student, not every course makes sense to go to university. And in fact, we have an extremely strong network of colleges, degree-granting colleges, that are typically more applied in the kinds of degrees, often very sophisticated, that they provide. And so that's been a real change in our education system. But it's allowed for young Canadians to choose a large number of different pathways that are not, because not every student responds the same way. And if you have a rigid system that expects everyone to go down the same route, you're going to leave a lot of talent behind. So I think for us, that's been the lesson in educational change, and it has opened up huge opportunities both for young Canadians, but now we have a massive growth in our foreign student population because I think students from around the world, including from Sri Lanka, are realizing what the opportunities are in a system that has so much variety and flexibility and quality.
Okay.
I think there's a question to the panel in terms of corruption as an impediment for economic growth, whether the panel can share some key insights with regard to how to deal with corruption. Anyone who likes to comment? There is actually.
Would you like? Yeah.
Malaysian High Commissioner.
Yes. Yesterday, I had the privilege to attend the launch of the Sri Lankan Anti-Corruption Manifesto.
That's right.
Actually, exactly a month ago in Malaysia too, we had a similar pledge, and also it was launched by Prime Minister. And it has a long-term plan, also about 5-year plan. And I think corruption is a very serious issue. It affects all levels of society. And we need to be very, very stern and very serious about this. And action has to be taken. And since our new government has came to power, action has indeed been taken. And this is what the people wanted. And also it will also strengthen Malaysia's development and also moving forward.
Thank you.
I'll cite just one instance. We used to have, petty corruption, particularly at public procurement level, and that was infested with a lot of allegations. I think around 8 years back, government brought in EGP, electronic governmental procurement. Today, 77% of the governmental procurement are done through that EGP portal. That is radically transformed, and all those kind of tender box snatching away and everything has gone away, and now any possible manipulation, all that gone.
There's always resistance for that. How did Bangladesh overcome the resistance?
It's interesting, when technology, particularly the digital technology was brought in at the very grassroots village level, people didn't realize that how things will be transformed. It was done. So the issue is that how technology is infused or brought in, and particularly with participation, with ownership, and then you certainly don't make the others realize that. So there may be some bit of sugarcoating which would be brought in. And I think that comes to my mind as a significant instance where in a country like Bangladesh or Sri Lanka, significantly you can alter without going into confrontation, resistance, or any bit of tension to flare up.
There's a question to the Netherlands ambassador. Somebody wants to know what kind of technical assistance Sri Lanka can get from Netherlands, especially in the agriculture sector.
Agriculture sector.
Yeah.
Agriculture is very important to our country. We are the second largest food exporter in the world after the US, and we have a very small country, so we have to be very efficient. So technology is very high, and we try to share that knowledge, and that's something we do also with Sri Lanka. So we train people, we invite them over to the Netherlands, we have missions here. We focus, because we're small, so we focus here in Sri Lanka on poultry, on dairy, and right now also on horticulture. And in those three areas, there are investors back and forth that visit the Netherlands, but we also come here and train them. So that's what we do. It's mainly sharing knowledge, train them, and we also learn from Sri Lanka.
Okay.
It's back and forth. And also on, we have courses on integrated pest management. And lately on this caterpillar, we also had technicians coming here sharing knowledge on that. So that's what we do, we share.
Okay. One quick question from the Swiss ambassador. We all know Switzerland produces the best chocolates and the best watches in the world. Somebody wants to know about your work ethic. How do you create that world-class work ethic?
Well, I think it's not only about work ethics. I think the key word there is innovation and strive for excellence. I was just thinking that we Swiss, we got used to be one of the wealthiest countries in the world, but we tend to forget that it's not been always like that. In fact, until mid-19th century, Switzerland was one of the poorest countries in Europe. There are several factors that can explain that. One of them is that, unlike Sri Lanka, my country has not been blessed with abundance of soil richness. So the success of Switzerland is quite recent, and there are several explanations for this success, but I think one of the main reasons is this innovation and quest for excellence. I tend to say sometimes that we Swiss were condemned to success and excellence because we cannot compete at price level with any of our competitors. And we have a very small domestic market, so we are obliged to sell to the world. And how to do that when you cannot offer best prices? The key is innovation, is having the niche product that nobody else has. And this is true for our watches, probably. It's true for our machine industry. It's true for several sectors. But the most, the best examples are what you were mentioning, chocolate. I would add coffee. If you visit Switzerland, you will see we do not produce cocoa, but we are one of the main exporters of chocolates in the world. We do not produce coffee beans, and we sell coffee everywhere in the world in the form of this fancy aluminum caps. And I think this is the secret, transforming a product into something that is, if not unique, that is considered to be one of the best, and for which people are prepared to pay the price it is costing. So we can do that also because we have put emphasis on skilled labor force. This is also an element, I would say. We have a highly educated, skilled labor force and a very innovative population. We have been ranked #1 in the World Intellectual Property Organization ranking for innovation for 7 years in a row. So that helps also. That helps explaining where this success comes from. So I think this is something that can be also done here because you have everything for this kind of success. Plus, you have the resources.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a quick answer from you on the tea exports?
Well,
Ceylon tea.
Turkey is per capita the most tea-consuming country in the world. And after Sri Lanka, Turkey is also the 5th largest tea producer in the world. We do have a yearly production of 250,000 metric tons of production, but the consumption in Turkey is around 300,000 metric tons. I mean, this difference of 50,000 metric tons we are importing. In 2017, Turkey was the #1 importer of the Ceylon tea, and last year, after Iraq, we were #2. Actually, out of this 50,000 metric tons, we are importing 30,000 from Sri Lanka. In that sense, actually, well, there is remaining 20,000 that we can still import from Sri Lanka, but there are also some other countries who are willing to export to Turkey too.
Do we need to improve the promotion in Turkey?
Well, it's already well known. I mean, it's a very well known thing in the Ceylon tea in Turkey. It's always good, of course, to promoting, that's for sure. And actually, you did this in the last couple of years. There was this tea promotion campaign from the Sri Lankan government, and the Sri Lankan embassy in Turkey organized in several cities tea promotion campaigns in Turkey. In that sense, actually, this is the one of our major trade item between Turkey and Sri Lanka.
Thank you. Mr.
Yeah, there's a question for the entire panel. Trump never fails to come up in any discussion. So the question is, how do you see Trump's protectionism theory and how it's impact to your own countries first and emerging markets? Also, Ryder, that I know James did mention about protectionism is getting very popular, bringing people into power as well. There is a lot of support for that. Whether the panel can respond. Trump's protectionism and impact on your own countries and emerging markets. Anyone?
I can quickly say a word from the European Union side, maybe. Because what we saw once protectionist measures come in, it started with against steel from China, I think. The EU quickly mounted countermeasures, although we were not directly targeted. The reason was that all this extra capacity of steel would probably then find its way to our market, and we would have the trouble of protecting our industries. And so it went from on, and the immediate reaction of the EU was to come up with a very detailed list of countermeasures against key industries in key Republican states, I have to say, like whiskey, Harley Davidson, and that sort of thing. And it's just moving itself up. I mean, this got stopped for the moment, but the risk is still there that there will be high tariffs on the European car industry. Although the European car industry is employing thousands of Americans, they are producing in the US. And if these things indeed take place, everybody will lose, essentially. But I think faced with such a threat, it's important to stand up as well. Otherwise, there's no end to it.
Fine.
Mr.
Any more responses from the panel? Yes.
I think that in Canada has been on the front line of some of this in terms of as we still have steel and aluminum, our steel and aluminum faced tariffs going to the United States on national security grounds. So go figure that. But I think one of the things that's really important about this new wave of protectionism is, and especially in the way that it's being done, is that it's introduced a whole lot of uncertainty into the global trading system. And we need to remember that the post-war prosperity came about because of a rules-based order that included a rules-based order for trade, and starting with the GATT and then becoming the WTO. And there was a kind of understanding of the great trading nations of the world, which have expanded over time. And I look at my colleague from China who's here as well, and China is very much integrated into the global trade system, that predictability has been key to the success of that and to the prosperity of the world. And I think the really troubling thing for, from my perspective, and I think I would be fair to say a lot of policymakers in Ottawa, is that we just don't know what's next. And that makes planning very difficult, whether you're in government, but more importantly, frankly, if you're in business and the ones who are trying to take advantage of the openness of the global trading system.
There's a question for China again. The question is about protectionism in China, and also whether the Chinese economy is slowing down and what impact it can have in Asia.
So many questions. So where should we start? Maybe from the Trump administration. So far, the ongoing consultation between China and the US is okay. We have made substantial progress, and we are positive about the final results. But nowadays, I was thinking actually why it happened and what we are doing. Maybe we are standing on the crossroads. We should make our decision. Shall we choose protectionism, or shall we choose free trade? Many years ago, when China tried to join WTO, actually we have different opinions inside. Some of our people argued that we pay too much for that, but we still made the decision that to join WTO just because we think that's the trend of the new era. So we should follow that. Even until now, the Chinese government still uphold free trade and international cooperation. So that's our opinion. And as to the slowdown of our GDP growth, well, that's true. We are encounter some downward pressure. That's true. But to think about the large scale economy of China, that's normal. We are not running a 100-meter dash, but we are running marathon. So you need to control the pace, and that's normal, I think. And last year the GDP growth is okay, I think. And this year we have adjusted the goal, but still within a reasonable range. It's between 6 and 6.5%. I think compared with many other countries, this growth is already big enough.
Yeah. James, if I don't ask you this question, I'll be found fault. Students want to know whether you can make the visa process a bit more easier for them to get access into the UK. I know it's a bit of a tricky question, but...
I think I can fairly say that our visa process is not too difficult, and actually we are proud of the way that we run it, and I'm sort of proud for Sri Lanka that so many Sri Lankans are successful in their visa applications, and the great majority of visa applicants in all categories are successful. Yes, I know there was some concern locally when we took the decision 10 years ago now to move the visa operation out of Colombo. It was moved to Chennai, as I say, a decade ago, but the system is running well. We are very keen for students, Sri Lankan students, to apply to and to study at British universities. And it's always a particular pleasure for me to meet so many Sri Lankans who have studied there. I should say as well that it's also nice now seeing so many Sri Lankans studying for British university degrees here in Colombo. I think the figure now, well, we have 30 30 universities offering courses through local partners. Quite a number of those provide for a part of that study in the UK, and the access that affords for, in many cases, more affordable education, but still coming out of it with a good quality degree is, I think, a very attractive development in the bilateral education offer.
I have a question to the Indonesian ambassador. Bali is about 8% of Sri Lanka's size, but you have about 6 million tourists annually. What is Bali doing right and what we are not doing here?
Well, Bali is one of the islands in Indonesia that out of 17,000 islands we have. Yeah. Like Sri Lanka, Bali is blessed with natural beauty and has a very unique and strong culture. So I can say that Bali has a strong character of tourism industry. So as part of Indonesia, of course, the government policy issues regulation for making Bali more attractive for tourists. We have built infrastructure, of course, and then connectivity is very important for us because Bali, although is small islands, but we can reach the countryside of Bali by car easily. And we also educate local people to have awareness of the importance of tourism industry. But now Indonesia have developed 10 tourist destinations beyond Bali. So now if you visit to Indonesia or to Bali, there are more than new tourist destinations. But one of the important things I would like to share here that we have given free visa for tourist visit for 1 month to 169 countries, including Sri Lanka. Yeah. So you are free, no visa to visit Indonesia.
Thank you. Okay, can I just ask a quick question from the Malaysian ambassador? I'm sure the tourism minister won't fault me for asking you this question. Malaysia gets about 20 million tourists. Somebody wants to know whether we are doing enough to attract tourists into this country.
I think Sri Lanka is on the right track because recently you launched the team of Soul Sri Lanka. And this is very important so that people will be able to relate to Sri Lanka. We had Malaysia Truly Asia. The slogan was with us for more than 25 years. And just now, the songs that the introduction that you had for Malaysia was actually the same song for 25 years. Yeah. We never change, and that is brand building. And I think Sri Lanka is doing that. And the other thing that I think it's so important when we first developed our tourism, what we did was we had a very liberal visa regime. We opened up to almost all countries visa free, and that helps a lot. And I think Sri Lanka is going to the same direction because I read in the newspaper that this year you're going to have visa free for many countries. I think that is a very good directions to go.
Okay. Before we close the question, can you ask one more?
No, I thought we will give each of the ambassadors one thing that they want Sri Lanka to do. Okay. Or should
So can I rephrase it this way?
Yeah.
The question is, given the challenges and opportunities Sri Lanka has, what would Sri Lanka look like by 2025?
Can I be more realistic? What would you like Sri Lanka to do in the short or the medium term? Each of the ambassadors and the representatives. Yes, please. Just one thing.
I'll start, but really coming in as well on the last question. Yeah. And it's a conservation point. I'm one of these people who thinks that Sri Lanka is truly blessed with its natural heritage, with its parks, with its birds and animals. It's interesting your question, Dinesh, was about
Yeah.
numbers of tourists traveling. And I hear numbers of tourists regularly. I think Sri Lanka needs to think hard about the balance between numbers of tourists and tourist revenue. They're quite different things. And I think that tourism policy going forwards, a lot of careful thinking needs to be done about how it is kept in balance with the need to look after the natural environment that makes your country so special.
Okay.
Can I
Yes.
add something to that?
Yes.
Indeed,
Yeah.
I mean, the main attraction is indeed the diversity of this country, the people. One tip, I mean, be careful with your taxes. I mean, Sri Lanka is quite expensive. You can charge the profit, but don't start at the beginning. I mean, just give it a try. And because, I mean, we compare. I mean, tourists compare. I mean, if you can stay 3 weeks in Thailand and just 1 week here and have the same kind of facilities, then, well, okay. I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to make that point.
Thanks. Yeah.
If you're asking for in the short to medium run, I mean, that may vary. But to my mind, if there is one way to focus, that would be how to generate wealth for 80% of Sri Lankans who live in the rural countryside. Today, Ceylon today has brought out fantastic, very poignant points, statistics. If you look at that, I think let's focus on the rural areas where we generate immediate wealth. Agriculture is a fantastic starting point. We have seen it in Bangladesh. 70% of Bangladesh is basically small and marginal farmholds. They have done the magic. They've shifted from rice cultivation to mango plantation. And today Bangladesh is the 4th largest mango producer. We have seen how wealth immediately gets into the hands of people. And then that has a sort of backwater effect in the economy. So I think to my mind, that's the starting point.
Fine. Yeah, you can.
I think I mentioned it already. I think if in the next 5 years Sri Lanka wants to further develop its position as a logistical hub in the Indian Ocean, it needs to continue to not close up, to let others in, to let investors in, to let products in, from port operations to customs to large-scale investments. There should be transparency. By closing up as an island, you will not be able to be a center of transport. Let's put it this way.
One thing that you want Sri Lanka, that you'd like to see Sri Lanka doing.
Well, I can not agree more what my Dutch colleagues said about the tourism here in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is in such a location where you can reach within 3 to 4 hours flight almost to the 60% of the world population. For that thing, you have affordable and practical flights to this country. But this flight is also not enough. When you are landing in Bandaranaike Airport, and after 10 hours flight from Europe, you would like to go, for example, to Mount Lavinia Hotel. If you are landing at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, it is just 43 kilometers from Bandaranaike Airport to Mount Lavinia Hotel. It takes you, I just checked, it takes you with the Google map 1 hour 40 minutes. I mean, 43 kilometers in 1 hour 40 minutes, it's too much. And imagine after a 10-hour flight from Europe. And also, once you arrived at the airport, the queue at the passport control. All those things are actually adding. Or you are just a pensionist and you have a limited sources and you want to use the public transport from the airport to downtown. When you go out to the bus station, you have to carry your luggages 100 meters by yourself. All those things, I mean, there are maybe, and also, of course, the taxation is an issue here. I mean, Turkey is, I can give it an example from my own country. We made in 2018, I mean, around 40 million tourists visited Turkey, and Turkey made approximately $30 billion out of it. And it is makeable, but we invest a lot to infrastructure, to vocational training, and we diversify our tourism industry. Not only sand and sea, not only leisure, convention, health, and sports. Many other aspects of the tourism can be lucrative for this country too.
Fine.
Thank you.
I want the rest of the panel not to focus on tourism only, but just give a general recommendation idea.
Yeah.
in terms of
So the question is, would we like to see Sri Lanka
happening?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Well, I'll try to be cautious, and I apologize if I'm being a little bit immodest on this one, but there are so many things in common between Switzerland and Sri Lanka. You have several ethnicities, we do also. You have several languages on the island, we do also. You are an island. There are some who claim that Switzerland is a political island. And now I will stop with the comparison. I will only talk about Switzerland. Switzerland had a civil war back in 1847, when the Catholic conservative cantons were about to make a secession from the confederations. After this period of tension, shortly after that, we had a new constitution. And this new constitution was adopted, taking care of accommodating the needs and claims of all the cantons and their populations, with checks and balances, and a sophisticated democratic system with a large extent of devolution of powers to local authorities. Since then, Switzerland has never been involved in a war, nor suffered from important violent political unrest. And nowadays, it is one of the reasons for which businesses and investors choose Switzerland as a location. In that sense too, I wish that Sri Lanka in 25 years would look a little bit like Switzerland.
Okay.
David?
Okay. Yeah.
I think I'm actually very happy to be following Hans-Peter, because my comment builds a little bit on that, which is that in terms of something to see happen in Sri Lanka and I think this is really should be focused on a business audience like this one, which is to make sure that in the coming years, the full diversity and creativity of this country is harnessed, and that this is a decision for every individual business. And I think particularly, it's not only about your ethnic diversity and making sure that the entire community, all those communities are part of the economic story here, but it's really about women. And it's, for a country that has for so long educated its women so well and has so many extraordinarily talented Sri Lankan women in Sri Lanka, and women who've gone around the world and become very successful with their Sri Lankan education, to see that you have the lowest workforce participation rate of women in South Asia should really be give cause for thought, because that is a huge missed opportunity for growth here. Because when your population is stable, your growth in your labor force is going to come out of better using the assets that you have.
Thank you. China, you can have the last word.
There are a lot of things to talk, but since I'm only allowed to mention one, so I may say a very general one. We would like to see a very open and stable Sri Lanka in the future, because when you are opening to the outside world and you adopt this policy and implement it in a stable and consistent way, can you attract foreign investment? With foreign investment, there will be more advanced technology, and there will be more advanced management experience. Then you can make your own business, local business, better than what we have now. Okay. So in China, we have done this for 40 years, but we always say we are still on our way. But I think we can share our experience with you as well.
Okay. Thank you. So on behalf of the Daily FT, ICC and SEMA, we thank you very much for your participation today.